Hello, I'm Michael Usher and welcome to Spotlight. Well, just over a month ago, Air India Flight 171 crashed, killing 260 people. Now evidence points to a disturbing possibility that the crash was the deliberate act of one of the pilots. If so, it will be the latest tragedy where the greatest danger when flying is the person in the cockpit. Ashlee Mullany reports.
Air India Flight 171 takes off from Ahmedabad Airport in northern India. Almost immediately, it's in catastrophic trouble. 39 seconds after it leaves the ground, it crashes in a fireball, killing 242 passengers and crew. There is one survivor. It's chilling to think about, but at what point, if any, would the passengers have known that something was seriously wrong here?
They probably would have heard the engines winding down, and those who fly frequently might have been aware of it, but it's unlikely. I think that they wouldn't have realised what happened until the last few seconds.
Initial theories on what brought down a 787 aircraft with a flawless safety record ranged from dirty fuel, incorrectly deployed flaps and landing gear, to a massive bird strike.
This has never happened before. Two engines failing just on rotate without it being a bird strike, multiple bird strike, into both engines. So one has to ask oneself, what happened here? Was it deliberate? Was it electromechanical? Or was it accidental?
Tonight, we test the evidence. Whether Air India 171 was deliberately crashed.
Mayday! Mayday! Mayday!
Gatwick Airport, London. Air India 171's destination on that tragic day. On the outskirts of the airport, an advanced pilot training centre run by UK company Motion Flight. In this cutting-edge Boeing 737 simulator, we're about to re-fly and analyse the doomed flight of Air India 171.
Okay, Air India 171, clear for takeoff, runway 23. So at this point, the brakes will come off and air traffic control would have cleared us for takeoff.
We're at the end of the runway at Ahmedabad Airport. At the controls, veteran British Boeing pilot Tony Debrett.
Thrust is set.
So everything was looking normal at this stage?
Everything's normal. Captain's got his hands on the thrust levers, the fuel control switches are in the run position. Everything's normal.
The aircraft starts rolling down the runway. It's 80 knots.
80 knots.
Check.
The aircraft continues accelerating. They reach V1 speed.
V1, so... and rotate.
So at V1, does that mean we're at the point of no return? This plane is taking off?
At V1, you're committed for the takeoff.
Pilot pulls the aircraft up into the air.
The aircraft's wheels had been off the ground for 3 seconds.
Suddenly, the switches controlling fuel to the engines are cut off. The plane is losing altitude. In the cockpit, an eerie exchange is recorded between the pilots.
Why did you cut off? I did not do so.
10 seconds later, the fuel switches turn back on, but it's too late.
One engine started to come on, the other engine didn't. They just had no time for the engines to restart.
Pull up!
So the power is lost. At this point, a mayday call was called.
Mayday! Mayday! Mayday!
Mayday, mayday, mayday are called out from one of the pilots.
Pull up!
And that's the end of the flight.
Pull up.
Even in this simulator cockpit, it's a shocking moment.
Three seconds after departure, you're in an absolutely life or death situation, and 30 seconds later, you're dead.
In terms of airline tragedies and mysteries, where does this one sit for you?
Oh, it's very weird. It's a very weird thing to happen.
It looks as if the power to the engines was cut off 3 seconds after liftoff, and that was the cause of the crash.
David Learmount and Alistair Rosenshine are former pilots and two of the world's leading aviation experts.
When you first heard that those fuel switches had transitioned to off, seconds after takeoff, what was your immediate thought?
I think it would be the same as most airline pilots, that one of the two pilots shut the engines down. Shutting down the engines at that point of the flight is going to only have one outcome.
I can't see another explanation. It looks as if one of them deliberately did this. If this turns out to have been deliberate, and we can, near as damn it, prove that it was a very, very clever way of making sure that everybody died. And what's more, we have recent history of events like this where pilots have done something absolutely unforgivable, and they've done it, and it's history.
In your view, is there any plausible argument for mechanical failure in this crash?
I don't believe that there's any information that we have at the moment that suggests there was anything wrong with that Boeing 787. At the moment, for me, the 787 is completely blameless.
Just this week, Air India announced it had completed a check of its entire Boeing 787 and 737 fleet and found no issues with the fuel control switches. So was this tragedy actually a mass murder? The latest in a grim toll of aircraft deliberately crashed by their pilots.
I started thinking that there is something more to it than just an aircraft fault.
Captain Mohan Ranganathan is a former senior pilot and one of India's most respected aviation experts.
What are you hearing from your sources about this investigation?
I mean, this aircraft has been flying for 15 years. More than 1,000 Dreamliners flying everywhere. You know, it could also point to a suicide, because there have been several instances where suicide has taken place. And that is something which is of very serious concern for people like me.
What Captain Ranganathan is hearing from other Indian pilots is deeply troubling.
Correct. From some of the information that has been mentioned to me by pilots in Air India, they did say that the captain had been going through periods of depression and he had taken medical leave.
Our experts agree that the key to unlocking the mystery of Flight 171 is establishing how those critical fuel switches transitioned off.
When those switches are flicked, how quickly does this become an emergency?
Well, almost immediately. And the reason for that is the engines are at near full power, so they require a lot of fuel, 4 times more fuel during the takeoff roll and initial climb than in the cruise. If you cut off the fuel pumps, the remaining fuel between the fuel pump in those pipes to the engines is very short and will be used up instantly.
That the switches were turned back on 10 seconds later could indicate one of the pilots was trying to save the plane in a brave but futile attempt.
Once those switches had gone off, nobody could have saved that aircraft. There was nothing that could have been done once those switches went off, because even switching them back on quicker wouldn't have done it.
There was nothing they could have done.
Nobody on board stood a chance.
56-year-old Captain Sumit Sabharwal had struggled with the death of his mother in 2022 and had separated from his wife. But at the controls for takeoff that morning was the far less experienced First Officer 32-year-old Clive Kunda.
Why did you cut off? I did not do so.
That fragment from the cockpit voice recorder is a primary clue.
The co-pilot said, "Why did you do the cutoff?" So he saw it out of the corner of his eye. He saw this going on.
It's very obvious that it is the first officer who's tried to relight, because they do say the captain was calm. One report says he was silent.
Captain Ranganathan's theory is that while the co-pilot was engaged with the takeoff, Air India's commander switched off the fuel controls, leaving Clive Kunda with an emergency he wasn't trained to deal with.
It is a cardinal rule in flying that even if you've given your first officer flying, and he's the pilot flying, if there is a major emergency on takeoff, the captain has to take over control. So, to me, it points to a deliberate human intervention.
And there's further proof, according to Captain Ranganathan, the time it took for the switches to be turned back on.
If it was a captain was active, this could have been done in 3 to 4 seconds. The fact that it has taken longer than 10 seconds points to the fact that it was the first officer who was struggling to restart the engines.
The preliminary air crash report released by Indian authorities provides few clues about the cause of the crash, and that's got experts worried. They believe authorities know exactly who said what on the black box recorder and could be trying to deflect blame from the pilot, something we've seen happen in Egypt, Indonesia and China.
You see, that is why India has to improve its credibility. With this crash, if they are transparent and come clean and admit who was responsible, admit that. No point in trying to cover up reports and try to divert attention. So it is very important for them to come clean.
The fact is, we'll find out what happened here. It's just how long will it take, and how messy will it be?
Why do you believe they're holding that back right now?
Some of that reluctance is cultural, and there is an established historic reluctance to release information and even on occasions to completely cover it up. And yet they know that their job is to release information which is the truth so that the world can prevent things like this happening again.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult to cope with this kind of tragedy because it's totally unthinkable and it's so shocking. I lost 3 members of my family, my younger brother, his wife, and my elder brother's wife, Alpa. So I lost 3 members of my family.
In Ahmedabad, Trupti Soni's pain is hard to imagine. In one terrible moment, her family decimated.
All the 3 they were the stars of our life. And we feel so much of loss and void because of them, not being there.
I'm still waiting for his message, that he will message me, come and pick me up from the airport.
In the UK, Samir Rafiq still waits for the cousin who will never come home, Faizan, who was barely 25.
Everyone is missing him, even family, friends, the people who have met him once. We all are not ready to believe that this kind of stuff has happened. He's a very positive and pure soul. Even if I try my best, I can't be like Faizan.
In India, there's disbelief that one of their own could be responsible for this tragedy.
Before blaming anyone, there should be proper evidence.
Boeing is a big company. Air India is a big company. There are big economic interests. So it is easiest to post a blame on the pilot's head. But I don't accept that it was done deliberately.
Up next, the Australian family destroyed by a killer pilot.
He mass murdered 149 people, including my brother and my mum.
A murderer in the cockpit.
Honestly, it could happen to whatever airline you normally fly with.
Michael Usher is who Australians turn to when major news breaks.
Quite a moment in our recent history.
To recognise him as Australia's most popular news presenter, head to tvweeklogies.com.au now.
If Air India Flight 171 was deliberately crashed on the morning of June the 12th this year, it joins a grim roll call.
We know of 8 airline crashes which have been attributed to what is called in the industry murder-suicide, where a pilot had committed suicide and had taken all the passengers with them.
For David Friday and his daughter Alex, news of the Indian disaster brought back painful memories.
When I first heard about the Air India crash, I had no idea what caused it. Voice recordings from the cockpit recorded that one pilot said to the other pilot, "Why did you turn the fuel switches off?" And the other pilot responded, "I didn't." I immediately thought, that sounds like a pilot who wanted to crash that plane. And so it just brought back to me the crash that took down the German Wings plane.
Breaking news at this hour, and a plane is reported to have gone down over the southern French Alps. It's operated by German Wings, an A320 Airbus.
A decade before the Ahmedabad tragedy, German Wings Flight 9525 crashed in the French Alps, killing all 150 people on board, including David's wife Carol and his son Greg.
I got a phone call in the middle of the night asking me, what was my wife and son doing? Were they on a plane? And then they told me that the plane had crashed.
I mean, who believes that their family's going to die on an aeroplane? No one believes that.
Greg was about to turn 30 and had a zest for life that, in March 2015, saw him about to start a working holiday in Europe.
That was Greg, I think, the day before he left.
So is that your last photo together?
Yeah. His intention was to live in France, teach English as a foreign language, and then play it by ear.
And you were feeling good about his plans to go to France?
Yeah, I mean, I think up till the day he left, I didn't really even believe that he was going, to be honest. Like, I kind of just thought, oh, yep, that sounds like a good idea. But, I think I was going to miss him.
Carol also loved travelling, and at the last minute she decided to join her son before he began his long stint away from home.
As you can see, they were quite social little beings, out and about all the time.
So it was this really great opportunity for them to do things that were on Mum's bucket list.
It was only, maybe several weeks before he left that she decided to go, and she said, am I going to go? And said, oh no, you and Greg go. Otherwise I could have been 3 people lost in the plane crash, and Alex would have been the only one left.
They'd toured Spain together. Germany was next. Carol had booked them on Germanwings from Barcelona to Dusseldorf.
It was Carol's birthday on the night before they took off. So they had a celebration in Barcelona prior to taking that final flight.
Yeah, I spoke to Mum and Greg on Mum's birthday, obviously. Yeah, it's probably the last time I spoke to them.
The following day, Carol, Greg and 148 others, including Andreas Lubitz, the flight's co-pilot, would be dead. A rare but tragic accident, or that's how it seemed at first.
What were you told in those early hours and days about what had taken place?
After some time, we found out that the cause of the crash was that the co-pilot had intentionally crashed the plane. Had it been some fault in the plane or something, that'd be something you would have been concerned that there was a fault in the plane, but it would have been something that I think you could have more easily accepted. But for it to have been caused by one person who had obviously decided to kill himself, but instead of just going off and killing himself, he thought, I'll just take down a plane with 150 people in it. It was just a terrible thought that happened.
What have been the emotions for you, Alex, when you learnt the circumstances?
Well, you know, there's anger and disbelief and, I don't know, sickness, like gut-wrenching, awful sickness. Still to this day, I don't believe somebody's actions could be so cruel. He murdered them in cold blood. He ran them into a mountain. He took a machine and ran them into a mountain.
He obviously determined after great thought how he was going to kill himself.
Jerry Skinner is a US aviation lawyer who represented the Friday family. He knows better than most the terrible details of Andreas Lubitz's last murderous flight.
It took preparation and it took nerve to go through with what he was doing to get across Europe and into the Alps. And he did it.
The cockpit voice recording revealed how Lubitz executed his plan.
"32,000 feet.
He put a laxative in the pilot's coffee so that he knew that he would be going to the toilet.
You can go now."
And he'd engineered it so that the pilot got locked out of the cabin. Shut the door, set the cruise control to an altitude of 0.
On the voice recording, the sounds of desperate attempts by the Germanwings captain to break into the cockpit.
The plane just went down, down, down until it crashed into the mountains. It must have just been the most terrible 8 minutes of their lives ever.
For David, Alex and dozens of other families, their grief cut deeper when they realised what was known about Andreas Lubitz before he stepped on that flight and killed their loved ones.
There's so many red flags through his initial training with Lufthansa, and he was in contact with doctors and he was receiving medications, and he took a break for a number of months because he was severely depressed.
Investigators found that on the day of the accident, Lubitz was still suffering from a psychiatric disorder and was taking psychotropic medication.
I know guys who don't take Benadryl when they have a stuffy nose because it'll ground them. I know when his autopsy was done, they found both antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs in his system, and I don't understand how he continued to fly.
Sir, your employee crashed a plane. Why won't you take questions?
A lot of people in our community suffer from mental health. However, the motivation to kill 149 people plus himself, it was in him to do that act. I don't believe that that's something that you can just paint a brush and say that, oh, he had mental health issues. So at the end of the day, he mass murdered 149 people, including my brother and my mum. So half our family is sitting in front of you today.
Why was it important for you to go back to the crash site in France?
That's where they're resting. Part of them will always be there. That's their final destination. I mean, we didn't get to hold their hands while they died in their last moments. And it's part of our cloth now. It's just had to be part of our life. And it's a life I didn't wish for.
Yep.
And I'd have them back. But I can't. So, yeah, I miss them.
Up next, the government cover-ups that have put us in danger.
Why do they do this? They are lying to the world and they're lying to themselves.
As horrific as the deliberate crashing of Germanwings Flight 9525 was, it is only one of a deadly pattern.
I've heard enough cockpit voice recordings. I've listened to too many of those. People saying goodbye to their spouse, people crying out, things like that.
Long before the tragedy in the French Alps, there was Egypt Air Flight 990.
Egypt Air 990 happened in October of 1999.
Flying out of New York on board the Boeing 777 were 216 passengers and crew. And Gamil El Batouti, an Egypt Air pilot, being flown home in disgrace.
Gamil was one of the most senior pilots at Egypt Air and had flown many, many, many hours and was revered as a very devout Islamic man. Unfortunately, when he would come to the United States, he would put aside his faith and he would pursue American women. In Cairo, he was going to be dismissed, retired from the company, and who knows what else was going to happen.
But incredibly, Batouti was given permission to fly the first leg of the journey.
He was prepared to die.
Just as with Germanwings 16 years later, Batouti seized his opportunity when his co-pilot left.
When he left the cockpit, Batouti got up, locked the door to the cockpit, and began to pray. But there were over 200 people, souls on that aircraft that had no idea what was happening. The airplane actually entered into a dive where the people in the plane would have experienced weightlessness.
In a move that would eerily parallel Air India Flight 171, Batouti moved the fuel control switches to off. Unpowered, the jet plummeted towards the Atlantic Ocean. Such a speed, it broke up at 10,000 feet. But despite the voice recording and overwhelming proof that Batouti had taken the plane down, Egypt refused to accept it was a deliberate crash.
The home investigative agency, in this case the Egyptian authorities, did not believe that this man would commit suicide. They believed that he was too devout to commit suicide and take so many people with him in such a cowardly way.
Likewise, with the crash of China Eastern Airlines Flight 5735 in 2022. International aviation authorities consider it a murder-suicide by the pilot, but China has shut the investigation down, citing national security.
I mean, you know, the China Eastern, I mean, everybody knows it was suicide, but China will not admit it. Why do they do this? They are lying to the world and they're lying to themselves.
They happen over and over again. And if you don't let the real facts come out and you don't allow the industry to respond appropriately, it will happen again. And it has.
It shouldn't take a tragedy like Germanwings for us to say, hey, we've got a problem. You know, you can have the best hardware out there, airplanes, but if you don't have the best humans out there with the full support that everybody else has, then you're just asking for it.
Dennis Tager is one of America's most experienced Boeing captains, trying to lift the lid on aviation's dark secret.
When a captain walks up to the airplane and things are not well on the inside, you don't see it. Welcome to the human condition. The system, the way it's set up, is to develop and enhance and bolster a culture of concealment.
Historically, pilots have existed in a culture that praises and promotes the right stuff, staying cool while managing one of the world's most complex machines, on which hundreds of lives depend.
Put a human being in, isolated, lonely, stressful job, disconnected from home, and then you put additional stress on them, and then you say, by the way, if you have any problems, don't say a damn word because you're gonna lose this job. It's insane.
Up next, what is the likelihood of one of these tragedies happening in Australia?
It's an awful thought. You know, how do you know that the person you're flying with is actually okay?
Seven News Spotlight consistently takes Australians to the heart of a story.
You ready, John? Rolling.
To recognise 7 News Spotlight as Australia's best current affairs program, head to tvweeklogies.com.au.
The tragedies of aircraft deliberately crashed by their pilots pose one urgent question. How do you spot the warning signs?
It's an awful thought. It's also an awful thought to think that you could be exposed to that yourself as an operating pilot. You know, how do you know that the person you're flying with is actually okay?
Sasha Robinson is a former pilot and founder of Flight Deck Consulting, set up to mentor pilots trying to establish their careers.
A lot of pilots, it's their passion. They couldn't think of doing anything else. And they're also not qualified to do anything else. You know, you do not need to even do your school certificate to become a commercial pilot.
But it's expensive, an investment for life.
It is a hard job, and in order to get to that phase and stage of your career, you've worked really hard. It's not just time, but money. You're looking at upwards of over $100,000 to invest in your licence.
To maintain their licence, pilots must do at least one medical per year with a CASA-registered examiner.
If you tell that examiner that you're suffering from depression or that you've seen a doctor and you're now taking antidepressants, does that examiner have an obligation to report that to CASA?
Yes, and then your medical will be cancelled, and then you're in the hands of the Civil Aviation Safety Authority and their processes.
It's quite a drastic step. You can see why that would be quite a scary prospect for a pilot to disclose that.
Yes, exactly. And so you really are putting your whole career and your livelihood, you know, your mortgage, whatever it is that you've got, the pressures at home, in the hands of something that you have no control of and you actually have no understanding of.
What happens here in Australia when a pilot needs mental health support?
So when a pilot needs mental health support, I think it's more reliant on self-reporting. You'll find that over 80% of pilots would not probably use those resources. They don't know if you use a company doctor, is that going to be kept confidential or will it be reported to management, and then the fear of retribution is real.
Pilots who do report mental health issues must then prove they're having treatment making them fit to fly.
I think the biggest fear is the fact that the process is not clear-cut. It's not transparent. There simply is no process in place. And not knowing what the outcome might be of that, you're probably looking at losing a job. You're probably looking at not getting back your licence for a long time. The process, it's long, it's arduous, it's bureaucratic, you know, it's red tape, and the onus is on the pilot to almost prove that you are fit to fly again, and it can be extremely expensive. You know, I've worked with clients where it's been upwards of $5,000 to prove that they're now fit to fly, and it's taken over 2 years. For myself, I'd certainly be concerned and worried about actually being openly honest with how my mental state was. If I'm going to be honest, I'd be very cautious of what I said.
We've seen that some of this research shows that about 12.6% of pilots screen positive for depression, 4.1% report suicidal thoughts. What intervention strategies could prevent those issues from escalating?
I honestly don't know. I wouldn't know how to address that in terms of intervening, because even with the cases that we've seen, even recently or in the last 10 years, there's been an increase in pilot suicides, and it's actually the second largest reason behind fatalities.
So while Australia, like America, offers mental health support, pilots like Sasha and her counterpart in the US, Pilots Union spokesman Dennis Tager, say it's not a real-world solution.
There's very little trust in the system, and that's what makes this so dangerous and so important to resolve across the globe and in other countries. And there's a lot of nice talk about make sure you take care of yourself, but the system doesn't necessarily provide for that. Sure looks good on paper, but guess what? I don't fly a paper airplane. I fly a real one with real people on it.
Next.
Honestly, it could happen to whatever airline you normally fly with.
The deadly pattern we ignore at our peril.
All steps to address this problem should be addressed. That's really all it comes down to.
For the travelling public and pilots, it's the worst imaginable nightmare that the person at the controls might be out of control.
It's a worldwide thing. It's as wide as aviation itself. I want to die. I'm going to take some people with me. Honestly, it could happen to whatever airline you normally fly with.
How confronting is it for you when you hear about these cases of pilot murder-suicide?
It's extremely confronting. It's shocking, it's a horrible tragedy, and obviously for the families and the airline industry or the aviation industry. But even as a pilot, it's it's sad to think that then the trust might be questioned again by the travelling passengers and the travelling, communities, and obviously it's extremely hard to predict, and that's the problem.
But with the crash of Air India Flight 171 feared to be the latest of these terrible incidents, experts say the aviation industry and governments need to act. How important is it that we not look at these crashes in isolation, but now start to look at a pattern here and parallels?
It's very important. I mean, the countries which have tried to sort of soft pedal the truth on accidents like this, they have to wake up, because by soft pedaling or hiding the truth, you're actually doing a disservice to flight safety.
Maybe things will happen even when you have a good system, but at least you can say at the end of the day, we did everything we could. But when you're not doing everything you can, then shame on you. Because when it happens anywhere across the globe, when it comes to pilots, when it happens to one of us, it happens to all of us.
Across these crashes, hundreds of innocent people have perished. Thousands more left with lifetimes of pain.
Air crashes, I think, are unique among these types of accidents where there are mass casualties. It's on the news every day, morning, noon, and night, for months. And then every anniversary, it comes up again, it comes up again, it comes up again. And people who lose valued family members in air crashes very seldom get over it.
Why, after 10 years, are you speaking about this now, Dave?
Well, just that all steps to address this problem should be addressed. That's really all it comes down to.
How are you getting on?
Oh, in a general sense, I'm getting on okay. Can be lonely at times, thinking of what would have otherwise been doing something together. I know when you think, oh, I think I might go somewhere or to some event, the thought of going by yourself is never as good as doing it with somebody else. So that's one thing I miss. Yeah.
We have a good family.
If tonight's story raised issues, you can call Lifeline on 13 11 14 or visit the website. Well, that's all we have time for tonight. Before we go, a reminder to vote for 7 News Spotlight in the Best Current Affairs Program category at this year's Logie Awards. The details are right there on the screen. Our team would love your support. I'm Michael Usher. Thanks for your company and good night.